Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I hope you've had a great day. Um, I'm not here in person, this is an illusion. It's a video recording because I'm actually in a meeting at the moment. But thank you for tuning in for tonight's devotion. And as I said this morning, we're going to be looking at the Judges, or at least we're going to look at some of them. I'll explain in a minute, but before we get into that, just want to remind you that tomorrow we're continuing in the morning at 7 o'clock, at 10 o'clock with the next devotion. We're going to continue on with this theme of consecration. And then tomorrow night at 7:30 we've got the prayer meeting, so don't miss out on that. You can get the Zoom login details from our Facebook page on the post for the prayer meeting. Also, just to remind you that this Thursday isn't a Bible school, because the Bible schools are every other Thursday. Not doing very well tonight. They're every other Thursday. So we have one just gone, and we're going to miss this week, and then the week after we're going to have part 2 of this month's Bible schools. Also, don't forget Saturday is our mystery devotion, and Sunday 11 o'clock as usual. I'm pretty sure by now you can probably tell me what all the announcements are anyway, so we'll just leave it at that, shall we? And we'll get into this. So, as I mentioned, we're looking at the Judges, and in case you don't know much about the book of Judges, it's basically lots of little kind of stories, and it's right after Joshua. And in Joshua, obviously, the Israelites, they went into the Promised Land finally. After 40 days of walking around the desert, they went into the Promised Land and they took the Promised Land. And everything was supposedly great. I mean, that's what we use that analogy all the time, don't we? Oh, this is my Promised Land, and I'm believing for the Promised Land. And, we read scriptures about how God's promising people the Promised Land, and it's all exciting. And the Israelites, they get the Promised Land, but then guess what? Life's so great that they just forget about God, right? And so Judges is like literally story after story after story of how the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, it says, and kind of turned away from him. And every time they turn away from him, God kind of turns away from them, because his covenant with them, his promise to them, was dependent on them continuing to serve him. And so, God's approach to them was very much, if you're on board with me, I'm on board with you. Like, I'm here, and I want to be a part of your life, and I want to be part of your world. But hey, if you just forget about me and move on, then that's up to you. But don't expect my blessing. Don't expect my help. In fact, you're going to probably find a lot of trouble in life, because you on your own, where you are in the Promised Land, that was a gift from me, and it's going to be difficult for you to hold on to that if I'm not involved. And so we see story after story, and a lot of it is like little bits of stories, as like little tiny stories. So like the first few chapters, there's names like Othniel, and Ehud, and Shamgar. I mean, Shamgar's story is one verse. It just says, after Ehud came Shamgar, son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad, and he too saved Israel. So we're probably not going to look at some of those smaller ones, because basically the story goes like this for those. Israel did wrong in the eyes of the Lord. They were oppressed by some external force in the country, oppressed them, dominated them, stole from them, persecuted them, attacked them, and they cried out to God, said, oh God, we're wrong, we should never have turned away from you. And then a judge comes in, and basically a judge is just a leader who stepped in, led the nation, and came, essentially led the revolt or the resistance against this oppression, and they saw great victory. Also, the judge was usually someone who people would bring their disputes to, and he would judge, or she would judge between, whether this person's right or that person's right. Okay, like you'd expect a normal judge would do. So, we're going to focus on some of the major judges. And so the first one that's really, for me, the first major judge in the story of Judges, in the book of Judges, is Deborah. And what's really interesting about Deborah is that she was this strong, confident woman leader, full of just the grace and the power of God. She was a prophetess. She had so much going on, but it just was really, really, I find it really, really bizarre that in this time in our history, in the world's history, where women weren't really regarded as intelligent, even they weren't really regarded as, definitely not in a role that required a level of responsibility. We've kind of gone in, if you obviously look at history, there are times in history where women have kind of risen up and fought for their rights and all that stuff, like the suffragettes and all that. Back here, thousands of years ago, I find it bizarre that in that society that they had a woman in leadership. So she must have been one heck of a leader, one heck of a person, one heck of a woman, to be put in that position. Obviously, it's a completely different time to now. In this day and age, women are seen very differently. I personally have not got a problem with women leadership. Some churches, some Christian leaders, they debate that, but I personally haven't got a problem with it. But that's, perhaps a bigger topic that we can look at another time. But anyway, let's get into this then. So we'll look at Deborah and see what Deborah's story is. So he said, after Ehud died, the Israelites once again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. So you see this kind of this to and fro. They cry out to God, they get rescued, and then they go back to what they were doing before. Kind of like us, I suppose. I don't know about you, but that's sometimes how I see my life. It's easy to judge when you're looking at other people. It's easy to judge the Israelites, but actually, you know what? There are days where I feel like I'm just not in God's good books. I'm just not doing what I'm supposed to. And other days I feel much more like I'm honouring God. Anyway, so the Israelites, they're going back to it. It says, so the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, a king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. That's how you pronounce it. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoim. Not sure why that was important, the location, but there you go. It says, because he had 900 iron chariots and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried out to the Lord for help. Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at the time. She held court under the palm of Deborah, between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. Lots of difficult words in this one. Not helpful, but we'll keep going. Said, and the Israelites came to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead the way to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, and his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. I'm just going to stop there and pick that out for a minute. Let's just see what's happening here. In fact, he goes on to say, he says, well, very well, Deborah said, but I will go with you, but because of the way you are going about this, the honour will not be yours, for the Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman. So in other words, Barak isn't going about this in the right way. What is he doing wrong? Well, we've said that already that Deborah must have been one heck of a woman, one heck of a person to be put in that position in that season, that time of the history of the world. Not only that, but we've just read there that she was a prophetess, and also that she held court under the palm of Deborah, where people would come and have their disputes decided. She was obviously a wise woman. She was obviously a woman who operated in the gift of prophecy. She was not one to be messed with. She was a confident, woman who spoke on behalf of God, who solved disputes, who was leading the nation. And Barak comes along. And Barak's like, I'll go do what you say. He's been told by Deborah that God has told him to do something. So I'll do what you say so long as you come with me. In other words, his faith wasn't really in God. His faith was in Deborah, this confident, powerful woman who hears from God, who solves disputes. It's like, I'll go, but I want you with me. I want your wisdom with me. I want you to come alongside me, to encourage me, to tell me what to do. His confidence was in Deborah, not in God. And he was getting it wrong. And we've got to remember that our confidence should always be in God. Shouldn't be in the people around us, shouldn't be in our ability, shouldn't be in our finances, shouldn't be in our physical ability, our health. Our confidence must always be in God. And because his confidence was in the wrong place, he was robbed of the opportunity to have some kind of recognition and glory in all this. In fact, it would have probably been a bit more humiliating for him to essentially this victory to go to a woman rather than him. So let's read on then. It said, so Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh, where Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali. 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah also went with him. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree in Zarnaim near Kadesh. More great words to pronounce. It says, when they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera gathered together his 900 chariots and all the men with him from Harosheth Hagoim to the Kishon River. Then Deborah said to Barak, go. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? So Barak went down Mount Tabor, followed by 10,000 men. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all the chariots and army by the sword. And Sisera abandoned his chariots and fled on foot. But Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth Hagoim. All the troops of Sisera fell by the sword, not a man was left. So I want you to stop there for a minute, because I want to draw your attention to something. The Lord rooted Sisera. The Lord rooted him. If you go into the next chapter, it's a whole chapter dedicated to the Song of Deborah. And there's one bit in the Song of Deborah, it says, in verse 21, it says, in chapter 5, it says, the river Kishon swept them away. The age-old river, the river Kishon. March on, my soul, be strong. It also says there that Barak went down the mountain. Now, essentially, the battle took place in the valley, in the flats. That was quite a strategic place for the chariots because they needed plenty of space to move around, and going up a mountainside was not a good thing for a chariot to have to do. So by coming down, it almost like they gave the advantage to the opposing army. Also, the fact there was 900 chariots and 10,000 men, but we don't know how many of the men also came with the chariots. 900 chariots was a force to be reckoned with. It was a massive, massive force. The chariot would absolutely obliterate the foot soldier. Chariots are fast. Not only they're fast, but they have a person on the chariot, driving the chariot, they have a person next to that person, javelin people, spearing people, shooting bow and arrow at people, whatever it is. It's very, very difficult for them to have taken down a chariot. 900 of them came out to face. In every way, shape and form, this was an opposing force that should have obliterated those men. The 900 plus whatever men Sisera brought with him. But it says that the Lord routed the army. And I want to just point out to the fact that, it mentions, like I said, about the Kishon River. I want to suggest that there was some in here of like biblical proportions. that God did something like he did for the Israelites when they went into the promised land. He said that God sent, drove out the nations before them. I want to suggest that in that valley with that river there raging, that God did something supernatural, that, he caused it to flood, and he caused it to, maybe it was a storm or whatever, but he literally drove them out. And I want to encourage you, because when you go into battle, whatever battle might look like for you, I don't know, for you right now, battle might be getting out of bed in the morning if you're struggling with mental health issues. Battle for you might be a health or other health issue. It might be relationship issue. It might be a finance issue. Whatever your battle is, I want to just remind you that God goes before you. He goes ahead of you. He fights with you. And he's the one who will root out the enemy. He did it for the Israelites when they went to the promised land. He did it for these here. They should not have won the battle. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. That the battles that you face, God puts you in those positions, or allows you to be in those positions, not because he thinks that you're capable, but because he knows he's capable. He makes a way. He goes ahead of you, and he fights your battles for you and with you. And that can give you confidence. You can stand up like David to a Goliath in your life and bring him down, not because you're capable, but because God is capable. Where you put in your trust. Are you like a Barak who puts his trust in people and other things? Or are you like a Deborah who puts her trust in God, and when God says go and do, she goes and does it? It says Sisera, however, so it says all the troops of Sisera fell by the sword, not a man was left. Sisera, however, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because they were friendly relations between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the clan of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in, don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she put a covering over him. "I'm thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. "Stand in the doorway of the tent," he told her. "If someone comes by and asks you, is anyone here, say no." But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. "Come," she said, "I will show you the man you're looking for." So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through his temple, dead. On that day God subdued Jabin the Canaanite king before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites grew stronger and stronger against Jabin the Canaanite king until they destroyed him. The last thing I want to mention, it's a real simple thought. The glory was taken away from Barak, as we mentioned earlier, and given to someone else. It's interesting, isn't it, though, that glory is given to a person. Obviously, God was the one who told him to do this. God was the one who rooted him out, like he said. And time again, we see that God, did that. He rooted people. He rooted out armies ahead of the Israelites, as we previously mentioned. I think it's a pattern, though, for us to observe here. If we give God the glory, if we recognise Him as being the source of our strength, if we recognise Him as being our provider, our sustenance, the one who really is the defining factor as to whether or not we have victory in our life, then actually God will still lift you up and raise you up. This woman got the glory. Jael got the glory instead of Barak. The point I'm making is there was glory to be had. And actually the Bible says, doesn't it, in different places that, God will exalt you if you humble yourself. Humbling yourself means not thinking about yourself too higher than you ought. It means also not puffing yourself up, being proud, being arrogant, talk. But if you are humble and if you put your trust in God, He will lift you up and exalt you. He will give you position, and He will in other people's eyes cause you to be a person that is worth respecting and honouring. And that is something that is exciting, right? We all want that. But the point is that we don't aim for that. We glorify God, and we allow Him, if He wants to exalt us. I think I'm just going to leave it there. Hopefully that's been in some kind of encouragement to you. keep going. If God tells you to do something, do it. Don't put trust in other things, but just trust in God, and He'll go before you, root them out, and He will glorify you if you give Him all the glory and recognition from the start and put your trust in Him. All right, have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you, if not in the morning, at the prayer meeting tomorrow night. All right, bye.